job, you may be seated. And I don't see a mic over there, so I'm just going to use this one. I just want to express our great appreciation for Cheryl Mingo and her ministry this morning, as has been said several times now. But now Tim and Barbara Lee are with us as well, and Tim's coming to share the word. Please focus your hearts on what he has to say. Thank you, Tim, for being here. Welcome.
We always kind of do things 2 for 1, at least part of the time here. So thank you for your reception. Thank you for welcoming us. It's so great to be back at Temple Baptist Church again. And so we're so grateful to be here. Always will remember your hospitality to us 2 years ago for my mom's funeral. So again, thank you for that. And I got to say, Cheryl, it's so good to be with you. The Tucker family has had a great impact in my own life personally. Your brother, Lauren, is one of my heroes spiritually. Your parents had a great impact in my life. And so you've been out of the country for most of my adult life, so we haven't gotten to hang out very much. But I'm so thankful for the Tucker family. And Adrian himself had a great impact in my life as I was exploring missions as well. So I'm so thankful to be here. We'll have to hang out. But yeah, we are Tim and Barbara Lee Glessner, your missionaries in Puebla, Mexico. And today we're going to kind of do things in a chiastic way to go ahead and honor my father with a technical Greek term. We'll kind of start with one thing, go into something in the middle, and then come back to the original.
So we'd like to start with a video that will give you some background as to what we've been doing. I'll just say that it's fun to see your faces. We have heard from you over the years while we're down in Mexico and are so grateful for your prayers. And so now to see you face to face, and just thank you for following what is going on in Puebla and praying specifically. Some of you have mentioned people by name, which is so encouraging to us to know that you have prayed that specifically for the ministry down in Puebla. So we'll let you watch here just a little bit, and we'll be back up.
Can we play an audio on that for a second? Because we got the audio going here, but not the video. We can flex. We're missionaries. We flex all the time, don't we? what if, let's see, do you have any questions? No, just kidding. Maybe we'll do that afterwards. But so yeah, we are sort of tech dependent here because we got PowerPoint and along with the video. But let's just start off. It says there, living out Psalm 25 in Puebla, Mexico. So while we wait for that, let's go. I'm going to go ahead and share a little bit, just the first 3 verses of Psalm 25. Thank you, Pastor, for reading those. This is a psalm that has become very precious to me personally. John Piper, I read after it became precious to me, he said something about, this is a psalm every pastor needs to memorize and say every day, and I am 100% on board with that. Because it starts off, to you, O Lord, I lift up my soul. In you I trust, O my God. And there's a popular song that many of us may have grown up singing, unto you, O Lord, I lift up my soul. And at some point I was like, I really like that, and I want to see the psalm that it's from. So, in you I trust, O my God. Do not let me be put to shame, nor let my enemies triumph over me. No one whose hope is in you will ever be put to shame, but they will be put to shame who are treacherous without excuse. And we're not going to go through the whole psalm today. It's worth your time. Again, go home and read it. But one of the things that's happened in the United States in the last 5 to 10 years is, if you're into statistics at all, you may have seen that the life expectancy of particularly American men has decreased in the last 10 years. And that just doesn't happen. In the last 100 years, the last 150 years with the advent of modern medicine, technology, better nutrition, life expectancy has been steadily increasing until the last 5 to 10 years. And that doesn't even go down to COVID, right? 5 years ago we were in COVID. And that goes on to what's been credited with the term death of despair, okay? And it's primarily due to suicides, middle-aged, primarily white males, and also drug addictions. So the fentanyl crisis, as we've heard, is a big part of that. But despair is a huge enemy of the human being. And this psalm here, I think, is not naming despair, of course, but it's taking that on in its root. And this concept here of being put to shame is not, I'm going to be embarrassed in front of anybody because I'm up front, my video's not working, or I forgot my lines in a play or something. It's failure. It's disgrace. It's all my hopes collapsed and I'm left with nothing. Okay? And that's the concept of putting to shame, of losing face in many other non-Western cultures. And so that's what David is beginning to say here. He says, do not let me be put to shame, nor let my enemies triumph over me. And it's a declaration of hope. We serve the Lord God, and so often people start stuff and don't quite finish it. If you've lived your life a lot, you've seen that. You always know the guy who's always got the next big project and never quite happens. And I know, I suspect Cheryl and Adrian are much better than we are. But you start a project and you announce it to the world, and then you're on the line, right? You're saying, we want to put up this ministry center, and you want to put up a camp. And here we are. Are we going to come back in a year and say, well, it didn't quite work out? But beyond that, are we going to fail? We see our weaknesses. We see our inadequacies. And are we going to fail and be put to shame? And David's declaration here that we come to time after time after time is, let me not be put to shame, nor let my enemies triumph over me. And different kinds of enemies, we don't even have to describe them here. But no one whose hope is in you will ever be put to shame. So that's the theme that we want to stress today as we look at this video. Is it up now? We're ready? We're good? Thumbs up? Okay. And we'll come back to this as we then share a little bit more personally.
As you come to him, a living stone, rejected by people, but chosen and honored by God, you yourselves, as living stones, a spiritual house, are being built to be a holy priesthood to offer spiritual sacrifices acceptable to God through Jesus Christ.
Building something new is always exciting. Little boys and older men will stand on the edge of a construction site, watching the excavators dig and the cranes lift. In the U.S., you smell the scent of wood, 2x4s and plywood. In Mexico, it's mostly concrete and plaster. And there's a great satisfaction in investing yourself in a project that grows from an empty lot or a hole in the ground into walls and a roof, then windows and doors, and finally, a space full of life and activity, community and family. But there's even more satisfaction and joy in giving credit to God, who is himself the master builder. Today, we'd like to tell you the story of what God is building in Puebla, Mexico. So we invite you to come and see what God has built.
Allow us to introduce ourselves. We're Tim and Barbara Lee Glessner. We've been missionaries in Puebla, Mexico for a little over 20 years, even though we look far too young for that much time. Up until a short while ago, our 3 children, Drew, Gavin, and Fiona, graced us in our work with their presence. But they decided to grow up and go off to Cedarville University to study. Puebla was a great place for them to grow up. Located on a central highland at 7,000 feet, Puebla is the 4th largest city in Mexico, with over 3 million people in the metropolitan area. It's rich in history, gastronomy, culture, and education. If you prefer mountains, those are also a major feature.
So, what have we been doing for 20 years? Well, to stick with our imagery, we could say we've been builders. We built a family. We built a house. We've been privileged to be part of teams building 2 new churches. And for 15 years, we have built connections and relationships in a neighborhood of more than 50,000 people. Pueblo Nuevo is a lower working class neighborhood on the west side of Puebla. It has a strong sense of local identity. It is common for multi-generational families to live in houses on the same property. The traditions of the community are quite strong. Yet, drugs and alcohol are a very visible challenge in the community. Teenage mothers and unmarried couples often present domestic and social problems. A rough educational infrastructure limits the future of the youth. This is a place that urgently needs the gospel of Jesus Christ. In a culture where trust is hard-earned and little is freely given, grace is a foreign language, yet one that sounds sweet to those with ears to hear. And so we've been seeking to build grace-filled lives in this neighborhood. We've built connections with schools, with leaders in the community, and with neighbors. We've even built a flag football team.
But since God's principal building project is a spiritual house consisting of living stones, we'd love to tell you about a building that is of eternal significance. That would be the church, specifically our church, Pueblo de Esperanza, a people of hope, which began services in 2013. God has faithfully kept it since then. The majority of our congregation is from our neighborhood. Most of us walk to services and Bible studies. We've worked hard to develop leaders from within the congregation, to train men to preach, to prepare children's ministry leaders, and to have a motivated and active women's group. Of course, nothing is ever straightforward. The pandemic was hard. We lost people to death, and to fear, and then to apathy. The church has seen its share of highs and lows, of leaders who stepped up, and of leaders who stepped out. We all know that transition and change is a real part of a church's life, but God has been so faithful. Our church, Pueblo de Esperanza, is His church, and He always provides. He always cares for his people. In January of 2025, we were blessed when a retired pastor, Hernan, and his wife Baz, were led to serve in the church. We've also seen so much growth in Roberto and Vicky, our elder and his wife. Others, such as Angel and Gabi, are taking great strides forward in the church. So when we return to Puebla, our ministry will focus on serving the church rather than leading the church. And very recently, God has allowed us to build an outreach center that we hope will be a great resource for building His kingdom in our neighborhood for many, many years to come. Let's talk about that building.
But will God indeed live on earth? Even heaven, the highest heaven, cannot contain you, much less this temple I have built. In the Hebrew Scriptures, God gave detailed instructions to Israel for building the tabernacle and then the temple. However, as the story of Israel shows, God's primary interest was in his relationship with people. The buildings were simply an instrument of God's presence. God's priority is always people, to build for himself a people set apart for him, knowing, loving, and worshiping him. So as we tell you about the Gotha Outreach Center, know that its purpose is to invite people into knowing God, loving him, and worshiping him.
The building has 3 floors. The ground floor is one large area intended to be a coffee shop, a welcoming space for conversations, for kids to hang out and do homework, to meet neighbors, and for discussion groups. This area already has flooring and is painted. It has electricity and a bathroom. It's not yet fully set up to be a coffee shop, but that dream is not too far out of reach.
The second and third floors are currently very unfinished, only concrete spaces with conduits and unconnected plumbing. The second floor will be divided into 2 spaces, a classroom space which we hope to fill primarily with English classes, but also perhaps art and music and other learning opportunities. We envision the second space as a counseling area, a place to address the many non-physical issues of our neighborhood. These ministries, once established, will meet a great need in our area. The third floor is designed with you in mind. It will be a 2-bedroom apartment designed to be a comfortable living space for those who come down to serve for a short term. We have been blessed to work with people who have served for periods of a month or up to a year, and we know the importance of a comfortable and safe living area.
In all this, remember that God's building plan is people. It's always been people. Peter reminds us that we are living stones. You and I are God's building blocks. So the Gotha Outreach Center is not the thing, but our prayer is that God will use it to abundantly bring more and more living stones into his building, who will echo Peter's words and proclaim the praises of the one who called you out of darkness into his marvelous light. Once you were not a people, but now you are God's people. You had not received mercy, but now you have received mercy.
So that gives you an idea, a quick idea of who we are, where we are, what God's been doing, and we're going to repeat some of that here and give you a little bit more of a specific taste for that. So do we, if we could, I don't know if we can switch over to the PowerPoint, and then we'll try to move things forward with, if there's a remote. I don't know if there is. I should have for that. We'll just say, next, please.
All right. Well, the first part here that we're going to talk about are 6 facts about the Glessners. So we'll just move through those quickly. I'm originally from Pennsylvania, and Tim from here in Washington, in the Tacoma area. I was a teacher for several years before we ended up in Mexico, and continued to be a teacher there as well. And Tim was a computer guy, so that's what he used to do. We've been married for 25 years, and year. We wanted to,
I'll go back and see.
you mentioned that we have 3 children. Our oldest graduated.
We'll do without the PowerPoint, I think, here, because we have really cool animation that we can't make happen. No, it's just regular animation. But yeah, 6 facts about Puebla. Puebla is almost 500 years old. So right now it's almost 2 times as old as the U.S. We're coming up on our 250th year anniversary here, and Puebla is coming up in a few years on 500 years as a city when it received its official declaration from the King of Spain. It's the capital of the state of Puebla in Mexico, and the population, the metro area is 3.3 million people. So it's a big area, lots of traffic. Picture Puget Sound condensed a little bit more in terms of population, and think of all the traffic. You complain about traffic on I-5, huh? But 7,000 feet above sea level, we mentioned that. A high plateau. It's a great climate to live in. And Puebla is actually, if you like history and culture, Puebla has had a number of the key moments in Mexican history. In fact, the Battle of Cinco de Mayo, which you all think is the Mexican independence, is not independence. It was just a battle against the French army that happened in Puebla, and it was a great upset victory for the Mexican army. There's a Volkswagen plant there that has produced cars for about 60 some years. And many of the Volkswagens you see here come from there. And it's a university town as well, home to a great number of universities, including the State University of about 50 to 60,000 students. So our church, as Barbara Lee mentioned, we'll jump ahead to a basic, there we go. That's an early service in our church. We worked with a team of several families and had a vision for merging some Bible studies in the neighborhood. And about 12 years ago, in September it'll be 12 years, we started services, and we did a number of activities together first, and we worked together to define and plan the church. And in September of 2013, we began services, and God has been so faithful there in that time. And in those early days, the church did a lot of different things. Mission teams were a key part in starting the church. A lot of activities, a lot of chances to reach out into our neighborhood. A lot of people coming to know the Lord, and God really used a number of churches coming down in those missions teams, as well as we have VBS. VBSs, we did Mercy missions there in the neighborhood, and we did we had pictures of baptisms and things. God was really, really good as we started things out. And long term, we've settled into women's ministries, a men's group that meets on Wednesday nights, and has worked hard to involve men and grow men in the church, and God has blessed that, as well as a youth. And right there, if we go back, go to the next slide, there's the team of leaders right now. We mentioned Hernan and Paz, Roberto and Vicky. are there on your right. And on the left side is Ruben. I mentioned him to the men yesterday. He's a man that we're exploring the possibilities of being pastor in the long term. So we appreciate prayers with that.
We've also, at the same time as having the church, been running an outreach ministry in the neighborhood. And it's somewhat familiar, I think, the name of Gotha to you, because we've been talking about it for many years. It stands for Grace, basically given and transforming. And so we use that whenever we're doing ministry out in the neighborhood, tried a lot of different things when we first were starting the ministry there in the neighborhood and church plant. Just trying different things, but we basically settled on a lot of work in the schools, teaching English, computer type stuff from our backgrounds, and then also sports. So you've heard us mention that flag football is a big part of our ministry and has provided so many ways to get to know people in the neighborhood and bring them into the church from that. So that was a preliminary part of Gotha. And now as we move into things with the ministry center, we hope that that center will provide lots more opportunities to get to know people in the neighborhood. And just talking with one of the ladies from church a few days ago, she wrote me and said, I can't wait to see that place open. And she's excited to see the people in our church getting involved. We're looking forward to how the Lord will put those pieces together for us to be able to use that building. Right now it's sitting fairly empty. It's used on Friday night, so at least there's a little activity. But when we get back, that's going to be our main thing to see that come alive.
But as we mentioned in the video, the point of ministry is not to have a building, it's not to do a sports team, it's people, isn't it? God's heart and our heart is for people, and our heart should reflect God's heart. So we're going to just tell you of a couple stories here. The first one I mentioned to the men yesterday as well. His name is Jimmy. He's 22 years old. He's been with us for 10 years now. Started coming. He came to flag football early on, and early on he was not the most coordinated athletic of kids. He's got some developmental disabilities, but from the beginning he was part of the team, and we accepted him, we loved on him, and that pulled him in. And he also actually came from a Christian mom. His dad is not a believer, but Jimmy, very early on, we realized he knows the Bible, which is really cool. And then he's always had a heart for service, and there you see him sideways helping move one of the single moms at church, but he helped pick up trash with us at the fields. There's a picture of him serving with one of our VBS with the missions team. So Jimmy has a servant's heart. And during the pandemic, his church closed, and so he actually started coming to our church and has been there ever since, a faithful part of the ministry and the work there. And Jimmy just brings a smile to all of our faces. And in fact, now he's even exploring the last few months. Right before we left, I kind of trained him on coaching our little kids. So we have 10-year-olds there, and he was starting to take steps on Saturdays to do coaching for them. You invest in people's lives, and you know what? There's an element of trust in that as well, right? We trust that God will continue His work that He begins in them, just as He's done that with us. And you know what? We're going to see that He keeps His word. He is faithful to that. And so we're trusting God's work and continued work in Jimmy as well. And now we'll talk about one of the ladies.
Elena is a lady that came about 3 years ago, dysfunctional family. What I remember of her most is she would get up each Sunday with a prayer request for her family. And she came to know the Lord and wanted to be baptized shortly after that. But it is amazing to watch the joy that she has in the Lord and how she knows that that can transform her family. a lot of self-worth issues from all that she's grown up with, but yet she knows the Lord has transformed her life and can do that in the lives of others. So we ask that you would pray for her family. She has 2 grandsons she brings to church and wants them to know Christ and talks with them at home about the lessons they learn in church. It's amazing, like I said, just this self-worth that is sad to see that you don't have, but then once you become a part of the family of Christ, it just changes your perspective. And she's loved in this family of Christ. She's serving, becoming more capable, more just confident to be part of the women's ministry, to be part of the children's ministry. And now, since we have been in the States, she's up front singing. And it's amazing to watch. And we're so thankful for what God has done in Elena's life, and just pray that it will permeate through her family.
So let's close this chiasm, as to say, and that's, you begin with point A, you move along to point B in the middle, and you get back to point A. And so we're going to look at Romans chapter 10, verses 6 through 13. Romans 10, 6 through 13. Now, if you know your missions passages, you'll say, no, you're supposed to start with chapter 10, verse 14. That's the how beautiful are the feet. How will they believe if they've not heard? How will they preach if they're not sent? We're not going to go there. That was actually the first missions message I can remember, and it was preached at Temple Baptist Church by Jerry and Donna Layton. I can remember being a boy of maybe 6, I don't know. But we're not going to go there. We're going to go before that in Romans chapter 10. And that is one of Paul's great expressions of how do you become a Christian? And so this is a favorite passage of mine because it gets to the heart of what we want someone to understand. And Paul says here, this is the message of faith that we proclaim. If you confess with your mouth Jesus is Lord and believe in your heart that God raised him from the dead, you will be saved. One believes with the heart, resulting in righteousness, and one confesses with the mouth, resulting in salvation. For the scripture says, everyone who believes on him, what? Will not be put to shame. Since there is no distinction between Jew and Greek, because the same Lord of all richly blesses all who call on him.